Hello everyone, and welcome back to another update on the fallen stars of America. In today's video, we pay tribute to American celebrities and influential figures from around the world who have recently left us. We'll cover those who passed away today or in the last few days, along with other notable personalities whose lives have made a lasting impact. Before we begin, please take a moment to hit that like button. It means the world to our channel and supports us in keeping these remembrances alive. Thank you, and let's get started.
Alan Arkin wasn't just a legendary actor, he was an artist in the truest sense of the word, a master of his craft who could take the simplest moment and turn it into something profound. Over a career that spanned more than 6 decades, Arkin's body of work became a testament to the power of subtlety and truth. He didn't need to raise his voice to command attention. Instead, he used stillness, timing, and nuance to convey more emotion than many actors could with an entire monologue. From his early performances in The Russians Are Coming and Catch 22, where he displayed a sharp wit and dark comedic sensibility, to his more reflective roles later in life, Arkin was never about performing for the sake of applause. He was always searching for something deeper, something real. His portrayal of the gruff but lovable grandfather in Little Miss Sunshine remains one of his most iconic roles, earning him an Academy Award and cementing his place in cinematic history. Yet it wasn't just his performances that made him special, it was his ability to make us feel something without needing to explain it. Arkin's characters weren't just roles on a script, they were people, with all the complexities, imperfections, and contradictions of real life. His characters could make us laugh one moment and break our hearts the next, often in the same scene. Arkin's range was truly extraordinary. He could seamlessly shift from biting sarcasm to gentle empathy, from comic genius to dramatic gravitas, all while maintaining an authenticity that made every performance feel honest and earned. Off-screen, Arkin was known for his humility, his introspection, and his relentless pursuit of truth. He wasn't just a man of great talent, he was a man of great thought and great depth. Whether as a musician, a director, or a writer, he brought the same intelligence and consideration to all his endeavors, never seeking the spotlight but always demanding integrity in his work. His career was never about the next big role or chasing fame, but about doing meaningful work that resonated with people on a personal level. Alan Arkin was not just a legend of cinema, but a beacon of artistic excellence and personal authenticity in an industry often driven by fleeting trends. His legacy lives on not just in the iconic roles he played, but in the profound impact he had on the craft of acting and on those lucky enough to have witnessed his artistry. He leaves behind a body of work that will continue to inspire, educate, and move generations to come, and in the hearts of those who loved his performances, his quiet wisdom will remain forever. Alan Arkin taught us that sometimes the most powerful performances are those that speak with restraint and clarity, reminding us that true greatness lies in the ability to be fully present and truthful in every moment, both on screen and in life. His passing marks the end of an era, but his legacy will never fade. It will echo in the performances of future generations, and in the simple, profound truth that less, when it is done with heart, is always more. David Soul was not just a television icon or a 1970s heartthrob, he was a rare kind of artist whose work transcended the fame it brought him, and whose quiet, deeply felt presence left an imprint on hearts far beyond the screen. As Detective Ken Hutchinson in the smash hit series Starsky and Hutch, Soul helped redefine the American TV hero, not just with charm and toughness, but with emotional intelligence, vulnerability, and an almost poetic stillness that made audiences feel seen, not just entertained. His chemistry with co-star Paul Michael Glaser was electric, but Soul's performance brought a soulful introspection that elevated the show from a buddy cop drama into something much more human and enduring. Yet even as the spotlight burned bright, Soul never allowed himself to be trapped by it. He stepped into music with equal grace, and when he released Don't Give Up on Us, it became a global anthem of longing and hope. One of those rare songs that seemed to hold the listener close in a moment of pain or love. But behind the fame was a man always searching for more meaning, more truth, and that search led him to the theater stages of London, where he spent years building a second act defined not by flash, but by artistic integrity. Soul performed Shakespeare, Chekhov, and politically charged drama with the kind of quiet power only a seasoned, soulful wasn't chasing headlines, he was chasing honesty. He also stood tall in his personal convictions, using his platform to speak out against injustice, war, and political oppression, often at great personal cost. He was a man of conscience, of creativity, and of courage, someone who could move you with a look, a lyric, or a line of dialogue. David Soul's life was not a simple rise and fall of fame, but a rich tapestry of reinvention, resilience, and resonance. His death leaves behind not just the echo of a golden era of television or a haunting ballad on the radio, it leaves a void in the world of artists who care, who try, who give, and who keep believing in the power of storytelling to connect, to heal, and to inspire. In every medium he touched, David Soul gave us pieces of himself, and in doing so, reminded us that the most enduring kind of fame is the kind rooted in authenticity and heart. Treat Williams was the kind of actor whose quiet brilliance often went under the radar, but whose impact ran deep, a gifted, grounded performer who brought a rare authenticity to everything he touched, and whose loss leaves an ache far greater than words can fully express. From his early days captivating audiences in Hair, where he embodied the restless energy and hope of a changing America, to his deeply moving portrayal of Dr. Andy Brown in Everwood, where he gave voice to grief, growth, and the complexities of fatherhood, Williams consistently elevated every project with a performance that felt deeply human and honest. He wasn't interested in playing caricatures or chasing blockbuster fame. He was drawn to characters with depth, with wounds and wisdom, with flaws and quiet strength, and he played them with a tenderness and emotional intelligence that made audiences feel seen. On screen, he could shift seamlessly from warmth to vulnerability to quiet power, and off-screen, he was just as remarkable, a devoted family man, an environmentalist, a licensed pilot who found peace in the sky, and a generous soul whose humility stood in stark contrast to his talent. Treat Williams treated acting not as performance, but as connection. He brought truth to his work in a way that felt lived in and sincere, and that's why his characters linger in our hearts long after the credits roll. His sudden, tragic passing in 2023 didn't just shock fans, it left the film and television community mourning someone who never demanded the spotlight but always deserved it, someone who walked through his career with grace, purpose, and quiet greatness. He was one of the rare few who reminded us that being a true artist isn't about fame or fortune, but about honesty, empathy, and the courage to be real. In a world that often celebrates the loudest voices, Treat Williams stood out by speaking softly and truthfully, and in doing so, he carved out a legacy that will never fade. Tina Turner was far more than a music legend. She was a living symbol of resilience, reinvention, and unbreakable spirit, a woman whose life story played like an epic ballad filled with heartache, glory, and unstoppable determination. Born Anna Mae Bullock in the humble surroundings of Nutbush, Tennessee, Tina's early years were marked by abandonment and hardship, but even then, her voice held a defiant strength that would one day shake the world. She rose to fame in the 1960s as part of the Ike and Tina Turner Revue, where her explosive energy and raspy, soul-drenched vocals captivated audiences, yet behind her radiant stage presence was a woman enduring years of unimaginable abuse and control. What makes Tina's story so legendary is not only the heights she reached, but the depths she overcame, walking away from everything, with nothing but her name, and fighting her way back into the spotlight on her own terms. Her solo career, reignited in the 1980s, became one of the greatest comebacks in music history, with What's Love Got to Do with It becoming an anthem of liberation and the best redefining power and passion for a new generation. But Tina's greatness wasn't confined to chart-topping hits or sold-out arenas. it was in her authenticity, her humility, and her willingness to bare her soul so others might find their strength. She was a trailblazer who broke barriers not just as a black woman in rock, but as a survivor who turned pain into power, shame into pride, and silence into song. Offstage, Tina found peace in the quiet hills of Switzerland, embracing Buddhism, love, and a life away from the glare of fame, proving that healing is not only possible, it's beautiful. Her story, immortalized in memoirs, movies, and Broadway shows, continues to teach the world that no matter how dark your past, you can rise with fire in your soul and grace in your heart. Tina Turner's voice was a thunderclap, fierce, unforgettable, and soul-shaking, but it was her spirit that truly changed lives. Her passing in 2023 marked the end of a musical era, but her light, her lessons, and her legacy will shine forever, reminding every person who's ever struggled, broken, or been silenced, you are not your scars, you are your strength. Cindy Williams was not just an actress, she was a cornerstone of American television, a face that lit up screens with a glow of sincerity, humor, and relatability that made her feel less like a star and more like family. As Shirley Feeney on Laverne and Shirley, she helped define an era of sitcoms that were not only side-splittingly funny but also deeply human, portraying a lovable, quirky, working-class woman chasing dreams with heart and hustle alongside her best friend, Laverne. Cindy's chemistry with Penny Marshall wasn't just acting, it was magic, capturing the essence of female friendship in a way that hadn't been seen before on television, and together, they created a show that was not only a cultural phenomenon but also a source of comfort and laughter for millions across generations. Beyond her comedic brilliance, Cindy brought tremendous range and depth to the screen, with unforgettable roles in American Graffiti and The Conversation, showing that her talents reached far beyond the sitcom stage. But perhaps even more remarkable than her performances was the woman behind them. Humble, generous, and full of grace, Cindy never sought the spotlight for fame's sake. She was beloved by her co-stars and adored by fans for her warmth, kindness, and unwavering gratitude for the career she so cherished. Long after the cameras stopped rolling, she continued to connect with audiences through theater, memoirs, and public appearances, always bringing the same genuine charm that made her famous. She inspired young women to dream big, to be funny without apology, and to embrace who they were without compromise. Cindy Williams leaves behind a legacy not just of laughter, but of heart. A reminder that true greatness often comes not from grand gestures, but from the ability to make people feel seen, loved, and understood. Her passing is a profound loss, but her spirit will live on in the reruns we still watch, the joy she gave so freely, and the trail she blazed for so many others to follow. Dexter Scott King lived a life shaped by the deepest kind of personal tragedy and the highest expectations of public legacy. Yet through it all, he emerged not as a shadow of history, but as a quiet beacon of grace, strength, and enduring commitment to justice. Born into the heart of the civil rights movement, he was just 7 years old when his father, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was assassinated, a moment that would forever shape his identity and the emotional landscape of his life. But instead of allowing that trauma to define him, Dexter transformed it into a calling, becoming not just a steward of his father's legacy, but a deeply thoughtful and spiritual man in his own right. He was burdened with the impossible, the eyes of the world watching him as the son of a martyr, yet he chose not fame, not politics, but service, healing, and stewardship. As president of the King Center, Dexter worked for decades to ensure that his father's dream lived on. Not as a relic of history, but as a living, breathing mission that required daily courage and compassion. He took bold stances, often standing alone, yet always grounded in his core belief in nonviolence, equality, and the transformative power of love. He expanded the legacy to include advocacy for animal rights, environmental consciousness, and personal spiritual growth, showing the world that justice isn't limited to race or politics, it's a universal truth. In his later years, he openly shared the emotional burden of being a king, the pain of watching his family's legacy be commercialized, the grief of losing his mother Coretta, his sister Yolanda, and the brotherhood he shared with Martin III. Yet through all this, he remained soft-spoken, deeply thoughtful, and consistently grounded. He authored powerful reflections, produced documentaries, and quietly touched lives, not by demanding attention, but by being present, listening, and honoring the values he was born into. When Dexter passed away in January 2024 at the age of 62, the world lost not only the last surviving son of an American icon, but a man whose life was itself a profound act of courage, restraint, and purpose. He never tried to replace his father. Instead, he preserved him, protected him, and added his own verse to the song of justice. His life was quieter than the marches and speeches that preceded him, but no less vital, because in every gentle step he took, Dexter Scott King reminded us that the dream isn't just remembered through words, but lived through love, compassion, and the relentless pursuit of peace. His legacy is not just one of remembrance, but of quiet, sacred endurance, and that may be the most powerful tribute of all. Charles Osgood was not just a broadcaster, he was the embodiment of gentleness, wisdom, and authenticity in an often chaotic world, and his voice became a cherished constant for millions of Americans. For over 2 decades, he welcomed viewers into their Sunday mornings with a calm and soothing presence on CBS Sunday Morning, offering not just the news, but a thoughtful, sometimes poetic reflection on the world around us. With his signature bow tie and ever-present warmth, he became the epitome of quiet dignity, guiding audiences through stories of joy, sorrow, and inspiration, always with a deep respect for the human experience. Osgood's voice wasn't just the delivery of facts, it was the delivery of meaning, of perspective, of connection, woven with a rare elegance that felt more like an old friend than a news anchor. He didn't just report the headlines. He honored them, finding beauty in the stories of everyday people, from artists to activists, scientists to farmers, from quiet heroes to the unsung, finding their worth and their narrative when the world often overlooked them. His hallmark was an incredible ability to convey the depth of a subject without sensationalizing it. His poetic segments, often laced with rhymes and rhythm, elevated simple stories into profound reflections, showing that journalism could be a form of art. Behind the bow tie was a man who understood the power of words to both inform and heal, to entertain and reflect, and he knew how to use them to create a connection that went beyond the television screen. His work spanned far beyond Sunday Morning. He was a writer, an editor, a radio host, and a military broadcaster, someone who had seen the power of communication firsthand and never lost sight of its true purpose. To build empathy, to share truth, and to celebrate the beauty of life, even in its simplest forms. Whether it was a story about a farmer cultivating the land or an interview with a poet weaving words into something transformative, Charles Osgood found meaning in the everyday, proving that the most profound moments in life were often the ones we took for granted. In a time when news often felt frantic, fragmented, and filled with urgency, Osgood stood as a beacon of calm, reminding us of the importance of reflection, of slowing down, of listening with our hearts, not just our ears. When he passed, it felt as though a unique and beautiful voice had fallen silent, one that had brought peace and clarity into the lives of millions. But his legacy endures, in every story he told, in every moment he shaped with his words, and in the deep sense of reverence he instilled in all who listened to him. Charles Osgood's life was a tribute to the timeless art of storytelling, and he leaves behind a world forever changed by his grace and wisdom. His influence will resonate far beyond his final broadcast, reminding us always that true greatness lies in how we use our words to elevate the world around us. His was a voice of calm in a storm, and in the echo of that voice, we'll always hear the kindness, clarity, and thoughtfulness that made Charles Osgood a legend in his own quiet, remarkable way. Tom Wilkinson was one of those rare actors whose performances didn't just entertain, they moved, unsettled, and stayed with you long after the lights went down. With a career spanning over 4 decades, he was a master of nuance, a man who could fill a room with quiet intensity and make even the smallest gesture speak volumes. He brought a fierce intelligence and emotional truth to every role, whether portraying a tortured husband in the bedroom, a conflicted fixer in Michael Clayton, or delivering unexpected warmth and humor in The Full Monty. Wilkinson never relied on theatrics or flash, his power came from his ability to fully embody a character's soul, to reveal the internal storm behind a calm face, and to show us the weight of silence, the ache behind restraint, the dignity of vulnerability. What made him exceptional was not just his range, but his humanity. He portrayed men on the edge, men wrestling with loss, pride, duty, and redemption. And he did so with a rare grace that made each character feel heartbreakingly real. Off-screen, Wilkinson was deeply respected by his peers, a man of immense humility who never chased stardom, preferring instead to serve the craft he so clearly revered. He had the uncanny ability to disappear into roles, often letting the performance speak louder than the name, and yet those who knew acting, who understood depth and discipline, recognized him as one of the true greats. He earned awards and accolades, but what truly defined his legacy was the emotional authenticity he brought to each story, a talent that made audiences feel seen, heard, and understood. With his passing, we haven't just lost a brilliant performer, we've lost a man who reminded us, through every layered role, that real drama isn't in the spectacle, but in the quiet, complicated truths of being human. His legacy will echo in the halls of film history, and in the hearts of those forever moved by his extraordinary ability to bring life's most difficult emotions to light with honesty, subtlety, and profound compassion. Andre Braugher was more than an actor, he was a force of presence, a storyteller of extraordinary depth, and a man who gave voice to strength, silence, and soul in ways that few could ever match. From the moment he first appeared on screen, he brought with him a gravity that couldn't be taught, a blend of intellectual power, emotional truth, and fierce authenticity that captivated both critics and audiences alike. In Homicide, Life on the Street, he redefined the television detective, giving life to Frank Pembleton with such emotional ferocity and cerebral intensity that he didn't just play a role, he reimagined it. Years later, in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, he showed a different kind of brilliance, turning the stoic Captain Holt into a beloved icon through subtle humor, dry wit, and deeply human vulnerability, shattering expectations and expanding the definition of comedic excellence. But what made Andre Braugher truly legendary wasn't just his talent, it was his integrity. He chose his roles with intention, gravitating toward complex characters that told deeper stories about justice, identity, and human resilience. He portrayed black men not as clichés, but as richly layered individuals, leaders, thinkers, protectors, flawed and beautiful, and in doing so, he quietly but powerfully challenged an entire industry to do better. His work left an indelible mark not only on television, but on the hearts of millions who saw themselves in his characters, who felt heard through his voice, and who were reminded that quiet strength can be revolutionary. Off-camera, Braugher was known as a thoughtful and deeply grounded man, a devoted husband and father, and a mentor who led not by ego, but by example. His sudden departure is a loss that ripples far beyond Hollywood. It is a personal grief for those who saw in him a beacon of excellence and humanity. In a world that often celebrates noise, Andre Braugher proved that the most unforgettable impact comes from those who speak with purpose, live with principle, and act with soul. His legacy will live on not only in the roles he played, but in the standard he set, one of grace, brilliance, and a quiet, undeniable greatness that will never fade. Tony Gainios wasn't just a character actor, he was a screen presence you never forgot, a powerhouse who brought a rare mix of muscle, mischief, and unexpected depth to every role he touched. From his breakout performance as Perry in The Wanderers, where he played the tough guy with a quiet intensity and a loyal heart, to his legendary portrayal of Meat in the iconic Porky's films, Gainios carved out a place in American film history not by chasing the spotlight, but by becoming the kind of actor audiences rooted for instinctively. In a Hollywood era filled with polished leading men, Tony stood out with his raw authenticity, his rugged charm, and his ability to blend strength with sincerity, making him a beloved figure among fans of coming-of-age films and underdog stories. He had a natural charisma that lit up the screen without effort, and a gift for bringing humor and humanity to roles that could have easily been played for laughs alone. Off-screen, Gainios was known for his humility, his deep connection with fans, and his gratitude for the career that gave him a place in cinematic history. He embraced his cult status not with ego, but with warmth and a sense of community, often sharing stories, jokes, and memories with the people who adored his work. His passing is not just the loss of an actor, but of a cherished symbol of a particular era in film, a time when movies were gritty, real, and full of heart, just like Tony. He represented the kind of character who may not have had the final word in the script, but always had the audience's heart by the end. In remembering Tony Ganios, we remember more than the roles. We remember a man who gave voice to the loyal friend, the quiet protector, and the unlikely hero. His legacy will live on through the laughter, the loyalty, and the deep affection that generations of fans will continue to carry for him, because Tony wasn't just part of the story, he was the story. Melinda Dillon was a rare kind of actor, the kind who didn't just play roles but inhabited them with such authenticity that every character felt like a reflection of her own heart. There was a delicate yet unshakable strength in her performances, a quiet power that never demanded the spotlight, yet commanded attention the moment she appeared on screen. Whether she was playing the loving but heartbroken mother in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the wise and compassionate woman navigating complicated moral dilemmas in Absence of Malice, or the endlessly patient and nurturing Mrs. Parker in A Christmas Story, Dillon had an extraordinary ability to breathe life into the most complex, understated characters. Her performances were never about showmanship or grand gestures, they were about capturing the subtle, poignant moments that make up the human experience. The way a glance can convey a lifetime of love, loss, or longing, the way silence can speak volumes, the way strength is often found in vulnerability. Melinda's characters were often the ones who stood on the sidelines of the action, quietly observing, reacting, supporting, yet their inner lives were so rich and full that they stole the show without ever stealing the limelight. What made her work so profoundly moving was her ability to convey the depth of human emotion with the simplest of expressions, often conveying more in a pause than most actors could with a monologue. Off-screen, Dillon's humility matched her performances. She was a private person who let her work speak for her, choosing to remain out of the public eye and letting her artistry shine through without the need for accolades or recognition. But her legacy was undeniable. For all of the strong, iconic roles she left behind, Melinda Dillon's true gift was the way she connected with her audience. She was a mirror for the complexities of the human heart, reflecting both its frailties and its incredible strength. When she smiled, we saw tenderness. When she cried, we saw ourselves. She gave us the rare gift of seeing not just a character, but a piece of our own lives reflected in her work. Her passing has left a hole not just in cinema but in the hearts of everyone who grew up with her performances, those who cherished her portrayal of the loving, the vulnerable, and the quietly heroic. In a world often dominated by loudness and spectacle, Melinda Dillon stood as a reminder that sometimes, the most powerful stories are the ones told in whispers, the most lasting legacies are the quiet, steadfast ones, and the most memorable performances are the ones that don't scream for attention but instead, draw us in with simple, undeniable truth. Her legacy is not just in the films she made, but in the hearts she touched, and her work will continue to resonate with us for generations to come. Adon Canto was not merely an actor, he was a living embodiment of heart, hope, and artistic passion, a man whose journey from a small town in Mexico to the heart of Hollywood was nothing short of extraordinary. His passing in early 2025 shook the world not because of his fame alone, but because of the profound sense of what could have been, a creative force just beginning to tap into the full depth of his storytelling power, now gone far too soon. With every role, whether it was the stoic yet loyal Aaron Shore in Designated Survivor, the chillingly complex Paul Torres in The Following, or the fierce mutant Sunspot in X-Men, Days of Future Past, Adon brought an honesty and emotional gravity that drew viewers in and refused to let go. He didn't rely on flashy performances or surface-level charisma. Instead, he gave us something far more rare, quiet intensity, soulful vulnerability, and a deep connection to the humanity within each character. Yet his gifts extended well beyond acting. A true creative at heart, Adon was a musician, a writer, a director, a multidimensional artist who believed in the power of storytelling not just to entertain, but to heal, to challenge, and to uplift. His work behind the camera was gaining momentum, with a clear vision for bringing diverse, emotionally rich narratives to life, and he had already begun inspiring a new generation of Latino artists to believe in their voices and their value. Those who knew him speak of a man who radiated warmth, humility, and integrity, someone who treated every person, from co-stars to crew, with the same quiet respect and deep attentiveness. He was a devoted father, a loving husband, and a loyal friend, grounded not in ego, but in love and purpose. In a world often obsessed with noise and spectacle, Adán stood apart, a man who let his art speak for itself, who lived not for the spotlight but for the truth within the story. His loss is not just a professional one for the entertainment industry, but a deeply personal one for all who saw in him a reflection of hope, ambition, culture, and authenticity. His journey was one of rising above limits, of bringing his heritage with pride into spaces that too often overlooked it, and of showing the world that greatness could come softly, humbly, and powerfully all at once. Though his time with us was painfully short, the legacy Adán Canto leaves behind, in his art, in his impact, in the countless lives he inspired, will live on as a lasting tribute to a man who gave us beauty, truth, and heart in its purest form. Norman Jewison was not just a filmmaker, he was a moral compass of cinema, a visionary who used storytelling not to escape the world, but to face it head-on, illuminating its darkest corners with compassion, courage, and clarity. His extraordinary career, spanning over 60 years, was marked not by flashy gimmicks or self-promotion, but by a steadfast dedication to the truth, whether that truth was about race, class, war, religion, justice, or the resilience of the human spirit. Films like In the Heat of the Night, which unflinchingly tackled racial injustice in a divided America, or Fiddler on the Roof, which brought depth and dignity to a story of tradition, persecution, and generational change, weren't just cinematic triumphs, they were cultural reckonings, capturing moments in history and challenging audiences to see themselves and each other more clearly. Jewison had the rare gift of being both a deeply empathetic observer of humanity and a fiercely principled artist, someone who understood the responsibility that came with a camera and wielded it not for spectacle, but for understanding. He worked with the greatest actors of his time, yet always centered the story, never the ego, and his sets were known for their mutual respect and creative freedom. Beyond directing, his legacy includes tireless advocacy for Canadian cinema, the founding of the Canadian Film Centre, and decades of mentoring young filmmakers who looked to him as a beacon of integrity and authenticity in a changing industry. He was a quiet revolutionary, someone who didn't need to shout to be heard, because his work spoke volumes. In an era where entertainment often turns away from the difficult and the real, Jewison turned toward it with open eyes and an open heart, showing us that films could ask hard questions, demand justice, and still move us to tears with their beauty. Though he has left this world, Norman Jewison's voice remains eternal, in every scene he shaped, every actor he guided, every truth he dared to tell. He leaves behind not just a body of work, but a blueprint for what it means to make art with purpose, to lead with conscience, and to believe that film, at its best, doesn't just reflect the world, it helps change it. Brian Mulroney was not just a former Prime Minister of Canada, he was a political titan, a visionary reformer, and one of the most consequential leaders in Canadian history, whose legacy continues to shape the nation's identity, values, and global standing long after his time in office. Born in a working-class family in Baie-Comeau, Quebec, his rise to the highest office in the land was fueled not by privilege, but by grit, intellect, and a deep belief in the promise of Canada. With eloquence and ambition, he brought a new tone to politics, one that blended principle with pragmatism, and conviction with compassion. During his transformative tenure from 1984 to 1993, Mulroney took on monumental challenges that others had long avoided. He boldly championed the Canada-US Free Trade Agreement and NAFTA, fundamentally altering the nation's economic trajectory despite immense political risk, believing that Canadians deserve to compete and thrive on the world stage. He prioritized environmental stewardship through landmark agreements like the Acid Rain Treaty with the US, and courageously stood among the first Western leaders to denounce apartheid in South Africa, forging a friendship with Nelson Mandela and placing Canada on the right side of history. Mulroney also navigated the complex waters of national unity, seeking to bring Quebec fully into the constitutional fold through the Meech Lake and Charlottetown Accords, efforts that, though ultimately unsuccessful, demonstrated his unwavering commitment to building a truly inclusive federation. Beyond politics, he was admired for his elegance, wit, and warmth, a devoted husband to Mila, a loving father, and a statesman who never lost touch with the human side of leadership. He had the rare ability to move hearts in a speech and command global respect in a negotiation, and his legacy lives not only in policies but in the values he stood for. Courage in the face of controversy, dignity under pressure, and an unshakable belief in Canada's place as a leader in the world. His passing marks the end of a remarkable chapter, but his spirit endures in the institutions he strengthened, the international alliances he nurtured, the generations of Canadians he inspired, and the very idea that leadership, at its best, is about serving with vision, honor, and heart. Brian Mulroney did not just lead Canada, he lifted it. Richard Lewis wasn't just a comedian, he was a cathartic force of nature, a master of confessional comedy who wore his heart, his hurt, and his hilarity on his sleeve in ways few performers ever dared. He stood on stage not to posture, but to bleed honestly, and in doing so, he created a unique space where laughter and vulnerability could exist in the same breath. With his signature all-black attire, feverish pacing, and tangled, neurotic monologues, Lewis didn't deliver jokes so much as exorcise his demons in front of a live audience, turning every insecurity, heartbreak, and obsessive thought into a moment of shared recognition. He made his pain your relief, his anxiety your laughter, his imperfections your permission to be human. Rising alongside legends like Robin Williams and Billy Crystal, he carved out his own inimitable space in comedy, one fueled not by bravado, but by a courageous intimacy that laid everything bare. Offstage, he was just as complex. A fierce advocate for sobriety and mental health, Richard was never afraid to speak openly about his own battles with addiction, often reaching out to others who were suffering in silence. His role on Curb Your Enthusiasm wasn't just a performance, it was an extension of his soul, sharp-tongued, hilarious, loyal, and painfully self-aware, playing a heightened version of himself with the kind of authenticity that only he could bring. His chemistry with Larry David was electric, a decades-long friendship that became comedy canon and revealed the heart beneath the cynicism. But beyond the fame, Richard Lewis was deeply reflective, a generous spirit who mentored younger comedians and reminded us all that the messiness of life is not only survivable, it's worth laughing through. His death leaves a void in the world of comedy, but even more so in the hearts of those who found hope, healing, and honesty in his words. In a world that often rewards the superficial, Richard Lewis gave us the gift of depth, the power of truth, and the rarest kind of courage, the kind that makes people feel less alone. His legacy is not just in the laughter, but in the connection he sparked and the truth he refused to hide. Carl Weathers was a towering American figure whose legacy reached far beyond the boundaries of any single career. He was an athlete, an actor, a trailblazer, and a dignified soul who embodied excellence in everything he did. Born in New Orleans in 1948, Carl rose from modest beginnings with an unshakable determination, first making his mark as a gifted athlete who defied the odds and played professional football in the NFL, a path that required not just physical strength but grit, discipline, and vision. Yet it was his second act, his transition to acting, that revealed the depth of his artistry and the power of his voice. As Apollo Creed in the Rocky series, Carl didn't just play a champion, he became one, breathing life into a character that was bold, brilliant, and bursting with pride. His portrayal wasn't just performance, it was poetry in motion, capturing the fierce beauty of black ambition, the resilience of the underdog, and the humanity of a man driven by greatness. He stood toe-to-toe with Sylvester Stallone and not only matched his intensity, he elevated the entire film with grace, intelligence, and presence. That role alone would have cemented his legacy, but Carl Weathers never stopped moving, never stopped growing. He brought courage and strength to Predator, warmth and humor to Happy Gilmore, and dignified wisdom to The Mandalorian, captivating new generations who had no idea they were watching a living legend. But Carl's impact wasn't confined to the screen. He was a quiet giant in real life, mentoring young actors, advocating for greater representation in Hollywood, and using his platform with thoughtfulness and purpose. He never chased fame, he chased truth, excellence, and the power to inspire, and he did so with a humility that only made him more extraordinary. His friends and co-stars described him not just as talented, but as a gentleman, thoughtful, generous, and grounded. Carl Weathers lived as a man who knew his value but never had to boast it. His work, his presence, and his legacy did the speaking for him. He shattered stereotypes and redefined what it meant to be strong, black, and brilliant in a space that rarely made room for all three. And now, in his absence, we feel the weight of his loss like a punch to the chest, not because he was famous, but because he was real. He was the kind of legend who didn't just play heroes, he lived as one. In every role, on every set, in every quiet act of mentorship, Carl Weathers gave more than he had to, and the world is brighter, bolder, and better because he was in it. His legacy will not just be remembered, it will be felt for generations.